Warning! This episode contains strong language, uncomfortable truths, and commentary that does not seek approval from activists, cable news panels, or social media outrage mobs. Viewer discretion is advised, not because facts are dangerous, but because reality tends to bruise fragile narratives. If you're looking for safe takes, selective editing, or emotional validation over evidence, this probably isn't the show for you.
All right, let's get something straight right out of the gate, because the left has already decided how this story must end, regardless of what the evidence shows, what the videos actually capture, or what the law says. According to the activist media industrial complex, we're supposed to close our eyes, plug our ears, scream murder, and pretend that a 2-ton vehicle accelerating toward federal agents is just a misunderstood act of peaceful protest. Apparently, cars aren't weapons anymore, and unless they're driven by someone the left doesn't like, then suddenly it's a deadly insurrection. What we're watching unfold isn't a search for truth. It's a coordinated emotional campaign. Liberal networks didn't wait for full footage, forensic review, or legal analysis. They skipped straight to the verdict, slapped a headline on it, and then worked backwards to justify it. Every clip that contradicts their narrative gets dismissed. Every frame that shows hesitation, warning, or threat gets ignored. And if you dare point out what's actually on the video, you're told you're heartless, fascist, or, my personal favorite, anti-democracy. Funny how democracy only counts when it agrees with them. Here's the part they really hate. Facts don't care about vibes. The law doesn't operate on hashtags. Use of force standards don't change based on who's trending on TikTok. And no amount of chanting in the streets magically rewrites decades of case law that says a vehicle can be lethal force when used against officers or civilians. But the modern left isn't interested in law. They're interested in absolution. If the right person dies, the right slogans get deployed, and suddenly accountability becomes optional. And let's talk about the media performance here, because it's almost impressive in its dishonesty. We're told to wait for all the facts, right up until the moment the facts don't support their story. Then it's, why are you focusing on details? We're told video evidence is unreliable unless it's edited just enough to fuel outrage. We're told law enforcement should show restraint, but only when they're the ones being threatened. Somehow the only people never required to restrain themselves are activists and commentators with microphones. So tonight, we're not here to play along. We're not here to pretend reality is subjective or that truth depends on political alignment. We're going to slow this down, look at what conservative outlets are actually reporting, examine what the footage shows versus what people say it shows, and ask the question no liberal panel seems willing to ask. What happens when narratives collide with evidence? Because if the left really believed this was murder, they wouldn't need to suppress video, shame dissent, or rewrite basic law. Truth doesn't need protection. Lies do. And that's where we begin. All right, let's bring in the crew. Brian's here bringing the MAGA fire, zero tolerance for narrative gymnastics, and a blunt take on law, order, and personal responsibility. Rachel's with us to cut through the noise, separate emotion from evidence, and ask the questions the outrage cycle keeps dodging. Daniel's in the chair, pulling at the threads behind the headlines. Who's coordinating the messaging, who benefits from the chaos, and why the facts always seem to arrive late to the party. And Skylar's here to challenge us from the left, focusing on civil liberties, government power, and where enforcement crosses into abuse. And I'm Artie, your host, here to slow the spin, call out the lies no matter who tells them, and make sure facts don't get buried under feelings. Let's get into it. All right, let's slow this down, because this is where the story starts falling apart for the left. Before the headlines hardened, before the word murder became mandatory vocabulary on cable news, we had video, multiple angles, multiple distances, real-time chaos. And what those videos show is not some calm, innocent driver peacefully leaving the scene. They show a tense enforcement operation, agents on foot, and a vehicle moving forward in tight quarters. That matters no matter how uncomfortable it makes people. And already I can hear it. Artie, you're ignoring context. No, I'm doing the opposite. I'm refusing to ignore the part of the context that doesn't fit the script.
Right. And the media pretending the video shows nothing is a choice, not an accident.
Exactly. Suddenly, video evidence is unreliable, ambiguous, or open to interpretation, which is wild because those same outlets have spent years telling us video never lies. Funny how that rule evaporates the moment the footage stops helping them.
And this is where the hypocrisy just screams. A car is either a deadly weapon or it isn't. It doesn't magically change based on who's driving or who's protesting. If this was a conservative rally and someone nudged forward toward officers, CNN would be running vehicular threat graphics nonstop. But because this driver fits the activist mold, suddenly gravity, momentum, and physics are optional.
And intent apparently only exists when it's politically useful.
Exactly. They keep saying, you can't prove intent, but law enforcement doesn't need clairvoyance. It needs reasonable perception of threat in real time. That's the standard. And the video shows proximity, movement, and unpredictability. That's not hindsight, that's training.
This is where things should be more sober than they are. The media keeps framing this as a moral binary. Either the agent is a villain or the public is heartless. But video analysis isn't about emotions, it's about sequence. What happens first, what happens next, and what choices are available in seconds, not minutes. And what's missing from liberal coverage is legal explanation. They talk tragedy endlessly, which is fair, but they avoid explaining why vehicles are legally considered potential lethal force. They avoid explaining why officers don't have to wait until they're under the tires to respond. That omission isn't compassion, it's manipulation.
But Rachel, that's also because people don't trust that explanation when it always seems to favor law enforcement.
And that mistrust doesn't excuse misrepresenting what the video actually shows.
This was decided before the footage even finished uploading. That's what people need to understand. The narrative locked in instantly, and everything after that became about protecting it. That's why longer clips don't circulate. That's why wide-angle views disappear. Ambiguity kills outrage, and outrage is the product.
Outrage pays the bills.
Exactly. If the footage raises questions instead of confirming murder, it gets buried. That's not journalism, that's curation. And we've seen this pattern before. Decide the villain, then edit reality until it fits.
I'm going to push back a little because while the media exaggerates, people aren't reacting in a vacuum. A civilian is dead. The government immediately closes ranks, and history tells people that investigations often protect their own. That doesn't mean the agent is guilty, but it does mean skepticism is earned.
Fair. Skepticism is earned. Blind certainty is not.
And conservatives lose credibility when they act like the video settles everything definitively. It doesn't. It raises question about escalation, communication, and alternatives.
And here's the line everyone keeps tripping over. Questioning the system does not require lying about the evidence. You can demand accountability without pretending the video shows something it doesn't. You can mourn a death without rewriting physics. But the left doesn't want nuance. They want a verdict. And that's why this story exploded the way it did. Not because the facts are clear, but because one side refuses to look at them at all. Next up, we're going to dig into what conservative outlets are reporting that liberal networks either downplay or ignore completely, and why those omissions matter. All right, now that we've dealt with what the video actually shows, let's talk about what the left conveniently leaves out, because omission is the quiet weapon of modern media. Liberal outlets aren't just disagreeing with conservatives here. They're actively narrowing the frame. They focus obsessively on the moment of the shooting, isolate it emotionally, and strip away everything that led up to it. Conservative outlets, on the other hand, are doing something radical these days, adding context. They're reporting on the scale of the enforcement operation, the warnings issued beforehand, the tension on the ground, and the reality that agents were operating in close quarters with hostile interference. That doesn't mean they're declaring sainthood. It means they're refusing to pretend the incident happened in a vacuum, and that difference matters, because when you remove context, you control the conclusion.
This is where I lose patience because conservative outlets aren't even asking people to agree. They're asking people to look. Watch the longer clips. Pay attention to distance, timing, movement. Listen to commands being shouted. Meanwhile, liberal media is telling their audience, don't worry about all that, just focus on the outcome. And that's insane. Outcomes don't determine legality, circumstances do. And notice something else. Conservative reporting actually references use of force standards, case law, and training. The left avoids that like the plague, because the moment you explain the law, the murder narrative starts wobbling. So instead, they lean on emotional language and moral certainty, hoping nobody asks follow-up questions.
because law is inconvenient when it doesn't validate outrage.
Exactly. They want accountability without standards. That's not justice. That's vengeance dressed up as virtue.
What conservative outlets are also doing, and this is important, is acknowledging uncertainty without pretending uncertainty equals guilt. They're saying, here's what we know, here's what the footage shows, here's what the law allows, and here's what still needs investigation. That's a mature approach, even if people don't like the implications. By contrast, liberal coverage often treats unanswered questions as proof of wrongdoing. If there's a gap in information, they fill it with assumption. If there's ambiguity, they frame it as concealment. That's not skepticism, that's narrative enforcement. And it trains audiences to believe that the absence of immediate condemnation equals corruption.
But Rachel, conservatives also have a trust problem. People hear lawful use of force and think it's just another way to excuse authority.
And that distrust doesn't justify misinformation. You don't fix broken trust by breaking facts.
What jumps out to me is how conservative outlets are pointing out coordination. Not conspiracy, coordination. Same language, same framing, same emotional beats across liberal networks within hours. That doesn't happen organically. That's messaging alignment. And when conservative outlets highlight that, they're immediately accused of deflection instead of being debated on the merits. Also worth noting, conservative reporting talks about what isn't being shown. Full timelines, pre-incident behavior, wider context. Liberal media treats those details like radioactive material because they complicate the moral simplicity of the story. Complexity is bad for engagement. Rage is profitable.
Nuance doesn't trend.
Exactly. And when nuance dies, propaganda thrives.
I still think conservatives underestimate how conditioned people are to distrust federal law enforcement. When conservative outlets emphasize justified, people hear case closed, even if that's not what's being said. That's where some of the backlash comes from.
That's fair, but here's the problem.
Go ahead.
Liberal media isn't offering skepticism. They're offering certainty, and certainty without full evidence is exactly what they accuse law enforcement of doing. That's the hypocrisy. So here's the real divide. Conservative outlets are saying, look at the full picture before you decide. Liberal outlets are saying, we've already decided. Now feel what we want you to feel. One side is arguing interpretation. The other is enforcing conclusion. And if this were really about justice, they'd want the public informed, not inflamed. They'd want longer clips, not shorter sound bites. They'd want law explained, not avoided. But that's not the goal here. The goal is outrage, mobilization, and moral leverage, even if the facts don't cooperate.
Before we wrap this up, quick pause. Because keeping this show independent, unapologetic, and free from narrative leash holders only works if you back it. If you like the fact that we're willing to slow stories down instead of lighting them on fire for clicks, then support the work. Head over to the Data Dissonance merch store. Coffee blends that actually wake you up instead of just funding corporate activism, hats, hoodies, mugs, and gear that lets people know you're not buying what the media is selling. No corporate sponsors pulling strings. No advertisers telling us what we're allowed to say. Just you, this audience, and a show that still believes facts matter.
Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to sit with. This entire story became radioactive not because the facts were clear, but because the outcome was emotionally useful. The moment this incident fit a pre-existing narrative, the investigation stopped mattering to half the country. Video evidence became optional, legal standards became negotiable, and certainty showed up faster than clarity ever could. What bothers me isn't disagreement, it's dishonesty. It's watching major networks dismiss footage while telling you to trust their interpretation of it. It's seeing activists scream, "Wait for the facts" in one breath and declare guilt in the next. It's the selective morality where vehicles are deadly weapons one week and harmless expressions of frustration the next. That inconsistency isn't compassion, it's propaganda. And let's be clear, acknowledging that a death is tragic does not require lying about the circumstances. Mourning doesn't demand narrative manipulation. Accountability doesn't mean inventing facts that feel better. But the modern outrage machine can't survive nuance. It needs villains, speed, and emotional certainty. And it will sacrifice truth every time to get them. If the left really believed this was murder, they wouldn't need to suppress context, shame dissent, or wave away video evidence. Truth stands on its own. Lies need reinforcement. And what we're seeing right now is reinforcement everywhere. From headlines, from talking points, from synchronized outrage that shows up fully formed before the evidence does. So here's my line in the sand. Facts first, always. Investigations should be thorough. Evidence should be complete. And conclusions should come last, not first. Anything else isn't justice, it's theater. And theater doesn't protect lives, fix systems, or tell the truth. We'll keep watching this case. We'll keep slowing it down. And we'll keep calling out anyone, left or right, who tries to replace evidence with emotion. Remember to speak truth, stir thought.
Tonight's episode of Data and Dissonance is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke Thriller series, because sometimes fiction is the only place you're still allowed to tell the truth without a Chiron screaming at you. If you're tired of narratives being manufactured in real time, of institutions closing ranks, and of truth getting buried under outrage, then these books are for you. The Covenant Protocol and the Prophet Directive follow a former intelligence operative navigating corruption, power, and consequences in a world where nothing is as clean as the headlines claim, and where evidence matters more than emotion. Book 3, Black Echo Rising, is out. And let's just say, if you think information warfare is intense right now, you're going to feel very at home in this story. You can find the Caleb Rourke Thriller series on Amazon. Links are in the show notes. Support the books, support independent storytelling, and support a show that still believes facts come before feelings.